And welcome to our KCAL 9 News Presidential Debate Roundtable.
Yeah, tonight's debate was the last chance. Of course, voters will get to hear from the presidential candidates, which puts some extra pressure on tonight's event, especially for Donald Trump, who is so far trailing in the polls. So join us tonight, Anj Marie Hancock, an associate professor of political science at USC.
Democratic superdelegate and managing partner for Dakota Communications, Kerman Maddox.
And John Fleischman, political editor for Breitbart, California, and founder and editor of the Flash Report. Welcome.
Okay, so we asked all of you to pick a sound bite that you liked from the debate. And John and Kerman, you guys both picked a sound bite from Donald Trump that centered on abortion. However, you both had very different views about what he said. So first of all, Kerman, let's listen to what you picked.
Do you want the court, including the justices that you will name, to overturn Roe v. Wade, which includes, in fact, states a woman's right to abortion?
Well, if that would happen, because I am pro-life and I will be appointing pro-life judges, I would think that that will go back to the individual states.
But I'm asking you specifically, would you like
to... If they overturned it, it'll go back to the states.
But what I'm asking you, sir, is do you want to see the court overturn? You just said you want to see the court protect the Second Amendment. Do you want to see the court overturn Roe v. Wade?
Well, if we put another 2 or perhaps 3 justices on, that's really what's going to be, that will happen.
What'd you think of that answer?
There was no answer. And again, the pressure was on Donald Trump tonight because he's the underdog and he's got to figure out a way to expand the tent. I don't think that answer is going to do well with moderates, undecideds, independents, and female voters. Female voters are behind the surge of the Hillary Clinton campaign. And even if he gives an answer they're not happy with, I thought it was incumbent upon him to at least give an answer and stand behind that answer. If you have principle behind something, I think people give you the benefit of the doubt. The fact that he didn't give an answer, I think, was a low point in the debate for him. Yeah.
Same topic, but a different reaction now to John's bite, which focuses on Clinton's position on late-term abortions.
Well, I think it's terrible. If you go with what Hillary is saying, in the 9th month, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb of the mother just prior to the birth of the baby. Now, you can say that that's okay, and Hillary can say that that's okay, but it's not okay with me.
Okay, John, so why'd you pick that soundbite?
Well, I picked this out for 2 reasons. One is, I mean, the reality in America, you're not going to win the debate on abortion on a presidential stage. It's an issue that breaks for Democrats versus Republicans. However, to take the issue to the extreme of abortion in those final days really does move to where the center of opinion on the issue favors the Republican position. Most Americans oppose partial birth abortion, oppose late-term abortion. But I also highlighted it because it showed that in this debate, unlike the other debates, there was a Donald Trump present, especially towards the beginning of the debate, who was a serious person on the stage talking about policy issues. And I think the bar is so low for him that it really allowed him to shine right out the gate.
All right. Now, Anj Marie, you picked a moment where the nominees really started to go at each other. Actually, one of the few times in this debate, compared to the other 2 debates, where they didn't interrupt each other too much this debate, but this one is about Vladimir Putin and accusations of Russian hacking.
We have 17 intelligence agencies, civilian and military, who have all concluded that these espionage attacks, these cyber attacks, come from the highest levels of the Kremlin, and they are designed to influence our election. I find that deeply disturbing, and I think it's time.
She has no idea whether it's Russia, China, or anybody else.
I am not quoting myself.
No idea.
I am quoting
Hillary, you
17.
Have no idea.
17 intelligence. Do you doubt 17
our
military
has
and
no
civilian
idea.
agencies? Well,
yeah,
he'd rather believe Vladimir Putin than the military and civilian intelligence professionals who are sworn to protect us.
So this is a place where Hillary Clinton was successful in kind of shifting the narrative. Rather than talking about the content of those emails, some of which were extremely embarrassing to the Clinton campaign, she was able to focus and tie Donald Trump again to Vladimir Putin. And so that was an opportunity, that Trump actually missed to actually hit Hillary Clinton where it would have hurt her in the campaign.
Absolutely.
Well, now to one more moment that stood out. Tonight, you heard at the top of our open here where Donald Trump said he would not accept the election night results right away, would have to take time to take a closer look at the fact. Kerman, you had a reaction to this. I believe we have a soundbite for that. Oh, I'm sorry,
Is
no
there
sound. So
somebody?
just
Well, I
react to
certainly
what
had
he
a
said.
reaction.
Yeah, go ahead.
The fact
Kermit
that
has a
he
reaction
was
to everything.
unwilling to accept, he basically said, I got to check it out. The fact that here we are at this point, and the candidate for president is unwilling to accept the results, I think that is fundamentally a disqualifying factor. And I think what's going to happen is over the next couple of days when people tweet and do post-debate analysis and stuff, they're going to come back to this moment and say it was a low point in
But
the
will
debate
that be
for
a big
Donald
deal?
Trump.
Because I think a lot of people think that that's just bluster on the part of Trump. He's not serious about it.
See, I don't believe that. I think that's the real Donald Trump. I think what you saw in that particular case is Donald Trump. Donald Trump can't accept the fact that he's about to lose this election, and he's about to lose, so he's blaming other people.
Well, and I think when you look at Donald Trump, this fits kind of into his reality TV style. You know, he's out there saying this to inflame the base. The reality is he's got the votes of Republicans at this point. He's pretty much brought the base back, but he needs them activated. He needs them motivated. And the fear that an election could get stolen from them is enough to get a lot of Republicans to say, I'm going to get off my couch and walk that precinct and make that phone call and donate my $25. That having been said, it's a pretty extreme statement, and I do think it will dominate the debate.
Do you think it's concerning to Republican leaders if you have a candidate who is saying this, and there is concern out there? Well, you know, he's saying that the election is rigged, and now he's not going to say that I will accept whatever the outcome is. What's going to happen election night? A lot of people have been talking about
this guy has said a lot more things that are more extreme than I'm not going to accept the election results. It's just, it's celebrity meets politics, and he's going to say a lot of stuff to grab attention. It's what he does. And contrary to what Kermit says, that's the real Donald Trump, I don't think that's the real Donald Trump. I think that's the showman doing what he does on television, and I think we won't really know who the real Donald Trump is unless he's in the White House.
But it also creates real headaches for the real Republicans who are trying to lead and to win and to keep the House and to keep the Senate, right? So Paul Ryan, even Mike Pence have to basically back up and say, okay, no, he didn't really mean this, he didn't really mean this. And instead of being out there making an affirmative case to moderate and independent voters about why the Republican Party still works for them, they're actually having to defend this idea of, no, the party is actually going to keep, you know, and have faith in the outcome of the election.
Could this actually be a tactic? Because, Kermit, we talked about this before the debate tonight. A low turnout, I guess, would probably help Trump, right? If he was trying to tell people that this was rigged, less people would come to the polls, and that would benefit him?
So I think low turnout does benefit Donald Trump, and I think one of the problems the Hillary Clinton campaign has is they don't seem to have the energy and enthusiasm that Bernie Sanders had in the primary or that Barack Obama had in 2008 and 2012. What they do have is they have a real good ground game. So I think they're working really hard to see if they can gin up the vote, create some excitement, and get people to the polls.
You know, I was in the room watching with all of you, and I'm checking social media, and a lot of people are just kind of tired of it. A lot of people choosing to watch the Dodgers game instead. And, you know, we heard
Boy,
a
that
lot
was
of...
a mistake.
Yeah. We heard a lot of the same things from both people. You know, Hillary attacking him with his rich father and the same lines all the time. Did tonight change any minds at all on either side?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't, other than the fact that he said the election is rigged and the fact that he's not going to honor the results, I think that's one of those moments. But I don't think at the end of the day what he said or what she said is going to change anybody's mind at this particular point.
And the flash, please.
Well, I was just going to say that I think that at this point, if Donald Trump had a performance like he'd had in the previous debates, it would have really spiraled for him. But I don't think he did that. But he's got a ways to go. There's been a trend against him, and I think this debate did not sink him, nor did it provide him with the jump that he needed. So he's going to have to really slog it out over the next 3 weeks since this was it.
Anj, you wanted to mention something?
I was just going to say that the flash polls are showing that, again, most voters did believe that Hillary Clinton won this debate just as she won the other two by about a similar margin, which was kind of a surprise to some of us. You know, we thought that it was actually closer because Trump actually performed better.
Yeah, and then I have to slip this in. We all have to congratulate Anj Marie's getting married this Saturday. So
Oh, very
we're all
nice.
Before
very
the
excited
election,
for
good
it.
idea.
Before I knew this election was going this way.
Well, congratulations,
Oh,
and
thank
thank
you.
you all for your insight. Of course,
you.
we're going to see you, some of you, for election night. So it's going to be quite
Just
an
19
interesting
days.
3 weeks. Yeah.